First and foremost, we're talking boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground. Boots are back on the ground. I'm going back to boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground.
So we hear boots on the ground a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, boots on the ground, classic Call of Duty, run and gun, fast action, strategic gameplay, right? It's what Call of Duty was born with and what we're bringing it back to. So it's fun, it's fast, it's strategic, it's that great skill-based gunplay that made Call of Duty what it is today.
Since Call of Duty World War II was first announced, it seems as if the excitement from the community is focused around one thing.
Today I have the most exciting news. Holy cow, is this exciting? Very, very exciting. I can't wait. Call of Duty 2017 will absolutely have boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground,
boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground.
It's in boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground, and boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground,
boots on the ground,
boots on the ground, boots on the ground. Everyone wants to hear that.
Now, even if you don't want boots on the ground, you don't want to say it.
And while I wanted to hear boots on the ground as much as the next person, the fact that Call of Duty World War II is returning to traditional gameplay isn't necessarily what has got me hyped about this upcoming release. When Call of Duty and Sledgehammer Games abandoned boots on the ground gameplay back in 2014 and introduced boost jumps and exo suits to the community, a lot of people were turned off by it. The community voiced their disdain, and yet 3 years later, the most recent Call of Duty game still features a form of this futuristic movement mechanic, which led Infinite Warfare to become one of the most negatively received Call of Duty titles to date. But Call of Duty abandoned something else. Something, in my opinion, far more important, years before Advanced Warfare. It's hard to put an exact time or title to when this first started to happen, but it was fairly evident that once it began to happen, it was already too late. Call of Duty abandoned reality. When the first Call of Duty was released, way back in 2003, it was just another World War II shooter in a sea of World War II shooters. The setting might not have been revolutionary, but it was relatable. No event shaped the 20th century and directly influenced the road to the 21st more than the Second World War. Many people had family that were directly involved in the conflict. Many grew up with this war as the central backdrop to their upbringing. And I'd venture to guess that many of these people raised our parents, and that impact has, in some way, influenced us. While it took place almost 75 years ago, it's still a war that hasn't truly left the public consciousness. Some consider World War II to be the last quote-unquote good war, a war where the sides between good and evil were easily defined. To put it simply, World War II has a simple narrative, and it's because of this that World War II is the perfect setting for films, television series, and in this case, video games. It was such a perfect setting that Call of Duty put out 5 World War II titles before they decided to change things up. What propelled Call of Duty to such great heights was that it was one of the first FPS franchises to take players from a World War II setting and place them directly into, well, modern warfare. With new weapons, new tactics, a new era, and a new enemy. This was what transformed the Call of Duty series from just another run-of-the-mill World War II shooter to what we know it as today, one of the most successful video game franchises in history. The Modern Warfare series may have abandoned the World War II setting, but it was still based within the realm of reality, and more importantly, relatability. It may have had a fictional storyline, but its fiction was based off of possible real-world scenarios. A rise of nationalism in Russia, terrorist organizations throughout the Middle East. These are things we see to varying degrees in our modern world. The Modern Warfare series brought Call of Duty into the future, and by doing so, brought Activision tremendous financial success. It was a formula they stuck with, going from COD 4 to Modern Warfare 2, and taking Treyarch further into the future with the Cold War and Vietnam in Black Ops 1. With each new release, they were taking the franchise further and further into the future, all the while remaining relatable. Call of Duty sales hit its pinnacle with Modern Warfare 3, and with this release, brought a conclusion to the Modern Warfare storyline. This trilogy boosted the Call of Duty franchise to explosive heights, and Activision wanted to continue with this financial success. They looked back at what had made Call of Duty so successful, and decided to double down on it, quite literally, with Black Ops 2. Black Ops 2 was the first title to take the franchise past the modern time frame and into the near future. The futuristic setting allowed Call of Duty developers greater creative liberties than would have been possible in previous games. And every Call of Duty since Black Ops 2 has taken advantage of this liberty by going further and further into the future. With this newfound freedom, they introduced fictional worlds with fictional conflicts and put you into the shoes of fictionally badass super soldiers, complete with a vast array of fictional weapons and fictionally badass future tech. When starting the campaigns in games like World at War, Black Ops 1, or the Modern Warfare series, I generally knew what kind of world I was about to step into. World War II, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, the War on Terrorism. Real-world events influenced these campaigns, and therefore allowed a level of immersion that just came naturally. But because the futuristic Call of Duty campaign takes place in a world of pure speculation, this world must be explained to you. The events that led up to the current setting must be explained to you, and the reason you're fighting your enemy must be explained to you. As a result, it becomes tedious and breaks the level of immersion. It becomes harder to relate to these worlds, to care about the conflicts, and to empathize with its characters. With each Call of Duty going further into the future, it became increasingly necessary for even more elaborate explanations. Some of the background information would be given to you in cutscenes, but most of the character dialogue was reserved to this role as well. Where in the past, dialogue was used to build relationships between the characters and the players, here in the future, it is used almost exclusively to explain and remind the player of what the fuck is even going on. They need to explain the setting.
What you're seeing is advanced warfare. Atlas has the single largest standing military in the world, but we answer to no country. Unlike the government, we don't keep secrets of our capabilities. We don't sell policy, we sell power. We are a superpower for hire.
The technology.
You've got a new bit of hardware inside your head. It's called a direct neural interface, or DNI. I've got one too. That's how I'm able to communicate with you. Your DNI is what connects your mind with your new body and the larger world around you.
The enemy.
This is Admiral Salen Koch of the Olympus Mons. This is Admiral Salen Koch of the Olympus Mons. This is Admiral Salen Koch of the Olympus Mons.
And explain to you how a terrorist came to power by exploiting his YouTube subscribers and Twitter followers. Combine these elements with the fact that you are a totally badass super soldier, a tier 1 operator of some totally made up unit, with a wide variety of goofy technology. When I'm asked to control a robotic spider, the immersion breaks. When I'm asked to control a robotic fly, the immersion breaks. When I engage in firefights in space, the immersion breaks. And then 3 years later, do the exact same thing across the entire solar system, the immersion breaks. When I fly through the air, in one game, and then another, and then another, the immersion breaks. And when the whole thing is just some kind of simulation made up in my mind, some players may not care about the campaign. They mostly worry about multiplayer, and the futuristic setting has certainly changed that mode over the past several releases. But based off of my own experiences, I'd assume that there are some Call of Duty players longing for the days where the campaign could hold its own weight. A campaign where the world is familiar, where the events happened on screen in front of your eyes. Your enemy is clearly defined, and your reason to fight could not be more evident. You begin to relate to its world. You become involved in its story, and have a personal interest in seeing how the narrative will play out. Bonds that are created between the player and the characters, strong enough that when a character dies, you truly care. And when a character simply vanishes, you're left forever wondering what truly happened. I look at these characters: Price, Ghost, Soap, Reznov, Mason, Woods. I know their names, I know their stories. But then there are these characters: Conor McGregor, and Jon Snow.
He's king of the North.
The dude from Law & Order SVU.
Train go boom.
Kevin Spacey.
When the money's coming your way, you don't ask any questions.
The Dos Equis guy.
Stay thirsty, my friends.
And the only character I can name from Call of Duty Ghosts, the fan favorite Riley.
One of the fascinating new additions to your squad is a dog.
When it gets to the point where I cannot relate to the world in which I play, the characters which inhabit it, or even my own character, I don't really feel inclined to play the campaign mode anymore. And that truly disappoints me, because it seems to be a trend that's increasing. Yeah, we all buy COD for the multiplayer, but more and more players are skipping the campaign entirely. And that's sad to think of when you look back at how great COD campaigns once were. So when I heard that Call of Duty was returning to boots on the ground, yeah, I got excited. But what I'm actually hyped for is a return to reality and the traditional Call of Duty campaign. Exosuits and boost jumps may have changed multiplayer over the last 3 years, but the futuristic setting has changed the campaign over the last 5 years. We haven't had a campaign take place in a historical setting over the last 7 years, and we haven't had a World War II shooter in damn near a decade. So while everyone continues to geek out about
boots on the ground, boots on the ground, boots on the ground,
what I'm hyped to hear is that
Call of Duty World War II does more than just go back to boots on the ground. It also delivers a gripping, immersive story and a dark, irreverent tone, which captures both the epic scale and the human struggle of this incredible conflict.
I'm hyped to hear that they're trading in the goofy boot super soldiers for
common everyday people who rose above the most epic and horrible conflict in human history.
And that we're going
back to the gritty, authentic, visceral military experience that Call of Duty was built on.
Call of Duty has been long overdue for an excellent campaign, and I look forward to what Sledgehammer Games has to offer. World War II is the perfect setting for a simple but classic narrative. Put us into the shoes of your everyday soldier, the one that fights not for glory, but for honor. Establish bonds with the characters we fight alongside with, so that we have a vested interest in their story. And put us up against an enemy so ruthless, relentless, and evil that we know from the very beginning the reasons we must fight. If Sledgehammer can make multiplayer what it once was, that would be great. But if they can deliver a classic COD campaign as well, Call of Duty World War II just might become one of the greatest CODs ever made. This has been Good Helvetica, and thanks for watching.